Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Ronnie Feldman for another episode of Creativity and Compliance. Welcome back, Ronnie.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Ronnie, I've long wanted to take a deep dive with you into going global with engaged, funny training and communication. So, can we maybe start with that? And I got a lot of questions, but when you sit down with a true multinational client, how do you help them understand what you create literally can go global?
Yeah, it's one of the most common questions that we get. I mean, the most common things we get is it okay to be fun and interesting with something such a serious subject? I think we've talked a lot about why that the use of humor, entertainment, music, and all these other things is an effective way to engage people. Full stop. All the behavioral science backs it up. It's been used in the marketplace effectively for years now. But the other is, and it's a common question and it's an important question because all of my clients, almost all of them are global multinational companies. So at some point they say, humor doesn't translate like this is a fact, right? And I go, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the, the idea that there is no single way to engage a global, multinational, diverse, multi-generational workforce, right? So everybody's just going, what's the solution? We have 10,000 employees and 20 locations around the world. How are we going to engage them all? Real simple answer is there isn't a single way to do that because there's too many variables in play. I mean, I would even argue that even within certain countries where there may be some generalities, like with some countries in Asia may have certain sensibilities, preference for physical humor or music, or others that more wordplay or whatever. There's different sort of cultural dynamics. That there's a wide variation even within the population within Asia, right? There's like people who like different things. People like different things. So the simplest way to engage the most people over time is to try lots and lots of little things, to try many different approaches. It's a little counterintuitive because in compliance, we're so risk averse. We want to find like, what's the magic bullet that engages everybody? And it just doesn't. What we end up doing is creating a piece of content or a training or a course or a video, and we pass it around to everybody and they go, oh, they won't get that, or they won't get that, they won't get that. And then we slowly kind of make it worse and less interesting until it engages nobody. The better approach is to be more creative, try lots of different approaches and circulate all those different approaches over time, knowing that some are going to engage with some and some are not going to engage, and some are going to engage with others. And that mitigates the risk of any one initiative. Actually, let me say one more thing. Truthfully, the most effective way is to get the population as close as possible. Like, I want to engage my millennial workforce in Europe around gifts. Like, the more specific, I can create content for that. But there's a lot of time and money and resources challenges to that. So we try and create things to kind of engage everybody. So the best thing is to kind of be as targeted as possible. But if you can't, then this is why having a library is important, or multiple libraries, or the sort of the Netflix approach, have lots of different kinds of programming and then circulate that programming out periodically to everybody. And then you have a better chance of engaging the most people. What do you think?
I guess I would go in a different direction because you use a variety of media.
Hmm.
You use music, you use animation, you use live actors, you use like a TV anchor. How do those, or can you utilize different types of media? Rock and roll music's always going to motivate me. You've got some great musically themed and based pieces. You've we've talked about some of the great animation you have created for some of your clients. How do you really work in the different types of media that you use rather than having to make it the lowest common denominator that doesn't offend anyone?
Yeah. So it's a great transition point because the first part of this discussion we just had is really kind of the broad strategy approach. But then within that, the back to humor doesn't translate kind of question that comes up. Yeah, it's why I call the company Learnings and Entertainment. Entertainment is broader than just comedy, and there's different comedic sensibilities and there's different entertainment styles. You mentioned some of them. I find that when I'm working with global audiences, there's a couple patterns. Animation tends to do better globally, and there's some practical reasons for that. It may feel less quote unquote real than having actors that people want people that will represent what they look like, but it's very expensive to shoot film and to shoot video with people who, with representation of all the different types of representation you need to have both globally and age and job function and ethnicity and all that stuff. So animation tends to be the best bang for your buck when dealing with a global audience because I mean, it's easier to show representation. You also can take representation completely out of it. Like you can have green characters and or shapes, you know, you can personify things. You could pull tractor trailers out of your pocket. It just sort of gives you a wide range of ways of getting to show a variety of settings and a variety of audiences and a variety of locations. Animation tends to do really well. I find that music tends to do very well globally, and there's some really interesting reasons for that. It is entertaining to sing about these various serious subjects, and you don't even have to make jokes, things that are satire and wordplay. It's literally, I'm going to sing this policy. So the messages couldn't be more direct than you're literally just putting a fun wrapper around the policy. And so I tend, when I'm dealing with global audiences, I tend to do stuff like that because I feel like the message is really direct and it's weird and interesting and entertaining already. Um, there's also little tricks, less text on screen because that takes your translation costs up. Uh, I do find that things that are very wordy and require wordplay, like I do have that news anchor show. It's sort of a late night talk show where it's like SNL Weekend Update. We do make jokes and not every joke is going to land. I minimize that approach when we're dealing with global audiences. Another good technique is to get representation and to appeal to a vast majority of people is to involve them. So we do a lot of custom videos like late night talk shows where we literally interview people in the company and we do it over Zoom or Teams or whatever. And that's really good because if you just literally involve the people in the different sites in the different countries. I mean, it seems so obvious, like want representation, then use those people. We've done person on the street style where we go around and interview lots of different types of employees. You have an event where lots of the different factions of your company are all in one place. That's a great time to go speak with them and capture their footage. And then you can circulate that. Let me think if there's anything else. Music's great. Yeah, just generally think of all the different ways that you consume information in your everyday lives. Game shows are good. Talk shows are good. Music videos are good. Any of those things that don't require a lot of turn of phrase, so to speak. What do you think?
I think the singing of policy is absolutely brilliant.
It's kind of
That is the most simplistic, funny, ironic, satirical thing you could possibly do, and if you put a rap around that or something other than the '70s rock and roll, I mean, people are gonna watch it just for the novelty of it, and you've got your message across. That's absolutely brilliant, Ronnie.
yeah. I appreciate it. When a lot of people who've been following me for a while know that like I started out building the Second City real biz short business, which I'm very proud of that work. It was a lot of scenario based comedic stuff. And then when we broke off to start Learnings and Entertainments, L&E, one of the thoughts was like, let's try some of these other styles and let's differentiate ourselves. So really, it's the first thing I ever created under our own brand as we created a bunch of music videos. And then if you recall, you've seen some of these before, we created this training jams things last year, which is super fun, where it's literally, let's read a policy, let's sing the policy. Let's ask a question, let's sing the question. It's so weird. I love it so much, but there was some thinking that went behind that. And it's just what we talked about. Let's say the message as directly as possible without having to make too many jokes. We should talk a little bit about There's a lot of new AI tools out there, which I'm a little hesitant about using a lot of these tools for content creation.
Well,
For
let me set that up.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So when I took computer science 48 years ago in college, they had a great phrase called GIGO, which meant garbage in, garbage out. Guess what? In 2024, people are saying GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. But you have a great way to, I think, phrase that for training, which is translating boring stuff is still boring. So, how does AI help you as a creator? But more importantly, how do you keep translating boring stuff just from keep from creating more boring stuff?
Yeah, there's a couple points in there. So it's a good setup. I forgot about it. I remember garbage in, garbage out. I didn't remember GIGO, but that's yeah. First of all, the positive part of these tools, we decided to contract with one of these smart AI companies for translations. It allows you to very quickly and easily translate your materials. So we at L&D, who we've been using our stuff globally for the last 8 years, and companies have been using them mostly in English, and we translate some of them. But now, very quickly, we have the ability to subtitle all of this content, and there's ways to check it because it's not perfect. But the tools are getting much better, and it makes it fairly easy to very quickly get your content out in other languages fairly quickly and much less expensive. So we're already doing that. I haven't been convinced with how good the dubbing is yet. For those of you out there who are the dubbing tends to be more expensive if you're having them voiced over. They're historically you have to find actors who can voice the stuff, but now it's getting better. So we're starting with the subtitling. Dubbing is ultimately better because it's better to hear those voices, but you get a cost benefit out of that. But the broader point you just brought up there is I'm so glad you did because for those who are out there who are like, "Ah, gosh, like I want to use this fun, entertaining stuff because we know it's more engaging, but we have a global audience, so we can't." Here's my answer to that. The stuff that you're currently doing that we know is boring the hell out of everybody, or they feel their time is being wasted, the long, boring, preachy stuff. You subtitle and translate that, it's still boring and bloated and preachy, right? That I keep trying to remind us of the goal. You know, the goal is to be positive and preventative, to kind of raise the visibility of these issues, to engage people around these issues, make them less scary. And we know being entertaining and fun and interesting is a better way to do that. But people are like, I don't know, it's not going to be funny for the people in China, or that's not going to be funny. And I'm like, funny or not funny is not the goal, right? The goal is to engage the most people to get them to be less scary. And if you get 10% more people to watch your stuff, they're like, all right, click through, it's only gone up 10%. And you're like, wow, 10%, that's 10% more people than you've engaged before. Do you know what I mean? It kind of drives me batty. We hold ourselves to a higher standard. So we're like, they're not going to find it funny. Well, I don't care if they find it funny. Do they get the message? Did they find it? Did they watch it? Did you get them to watch it? Did they find it interesting? Did they get the message? Did they uh, come away feeling I'm glad those people sent it to me? Like the halo effect of like people who sent it to me are more interesting because they sent me something more interesting. To me, that is the goal. I'm not saying that the stuff we create is perfect. It's really hard to engage a global multinational, multi-global organization, but please, we have to admit the fact that doing things that are provocative, that have a pattern disruption, that are fun, that looks and feels like the way we consume information in our everyday lives, like on television, podcasts, and film and commercials, doing things that look like that has to be more engaging. Even if it's slightly less engaging when it's subtitled, it's still better than the boring stuff that is also being translated and is now boring and End of rant.
Actually, it brings I want to take it in a different direction, Ronnie, because the Department of Justice has made clear you have to translate. And what you've just said is Yeah, you can translate your code of conduct. Yeah, you can translate your policies and procedures. But guess what? If it didn't work in the US, translating ain't going to make it work outside the US. And you've got to put that engagement, you've got to put that component that's going to get people to listen, to read, to ask questions, to raise their hand, all of those things. And so translations is almost, I guess, just the starting point.
I would say the phrase I like is creativity isn't a luxury; it's essential. And this happens with, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of practical reasons. It's most, you and I have talked about it. It drives me crazy. Like you look at how a budget is spent when you're building a program, and there's so much that goes towards investigations and controls and all of these things that are valuable parts of a program. But we spend far more money. We spend a much bigger budget on things that are not proactive and preventative, right? If you're, as you say, if you have a code of conduct that nobody reads and you post policies that nobody ever reads, and you push out a training that people are doing their laundry in the background, and then translate that, that's not an effective program. It's checking those boxes. We lose out on a lot of business because they go, "Hey, we just didn't have the budget this year." Um, and I'm like, "What are we spending the money on? We need to carve." I'm biased, obviously, because I believe in this so much. We should be carving out time to make the programming creative and interesting. It shouldn't be like, we didn't have time to do the fun, interesting thing this year, because I think it's so important. And back even when we first started doing this work, we, I just had a testimony from one of our clients who's based in Turkey, and he was just using it in English. He just is like, we all speak English. They're not going to get everything, but this is so much better than this other stuff. And he just gave us a testimonial about it. And he's using it in English and then handing out transcripts in their languages, right? So that's it's not ideal. The next best thing is uh subtitling it. The next best is dubbing. The next is creating something specifically for that audience. So there is sort of a cost benefit thing. But back to the point, creativity isn't a luxury. It's essential no matter what language you're dealing with, right? Globe people from all over the world like to be entertained and they like to learn new things. So we should combine those two things for that audience. And guess what? They don't have to laugh at everything, but do they get the point that like, thank you for sending me something fun, interesting, that didn't waste my time. And I appreciate you.
Right. That seems like a great point for us to end this episode. So why don't you tell everybody goodbye?
Bye, everybody. Be creative. Hey, global works. Comedy and compliance works globally.